After last week's deadly violence at the Capitol, 137 Republican House members and 8 senators still voted not to certify the election of Joe Biden as the next president. 2 Minnesota members, Representative Jim Hagedorn and Michelle Fischbach, were part of that no vote on certification. Minnesota's 2 other Republicans, Pete Stauber and Tom Emmer, voted to certify the Biden win. This morning, I spoke with Congressman Emmer, who is a power in the Republican Party as chair of the Republican National Congressional Committee. Well, joining us now is Congressman Tom Emmer. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Good morning.
Let me ask you, is President Trump fit to serve for the next 11 days?
Look, I think it's 10 days now, Esme, and the president has made it clear that there will be a peaceful transition of power, and I think we should all allow that to take place. So
you do not think he should be removed from office?
At this point, Esme, there's a lot of division in this country, and I think I just hope all of us would take a step back, take a deep breath. Rather than looking back, let's look forward. Let's allow the president-elect to go through his inauguration. President Trump has said that he is expecting a peaceful transition. Let's enjoy that peaceful transition, and let's turn the page and let's move forward and start to unify again as a country.
Well, I think everybody wants that, but I think a lot of people are skeptical about the president. There are 6 Republicans who've written President-elect Joe Biden, urging him to ask Nancy Pelosi to not have an impeachment vote because they fear that not only would it be problematic for the country, but it also could create more violence. Do you agree with them?
Well, that I'm not going to comment on. I will say it again, Esme. I think we're very divided. I think tensions are very high. Emotions are very high. I think now is the time for cooler, calmer heads to prevail. And I do think that the president-elect could set that tone. The president has finally acknowledged it will be a peaceful transition. Let's grab a hold of that. Let's make sure that we can enjoy what makes this country so unique, is that peaceful transition from one administration to the next. And let's all start taking some responsibility about how we're going to start unifying each other rather than pointing fingers and trying to cast blame. It's time to start coming together as a country.
Right. But doesn't that have to come from the president? I remember 11 years ago when there was a race for governor here, and the candidate that lost fought for 5 weeks, as was his right, but after 5 weeks in December, that candidate came together and said, we are all one Minnesota. Governor Mark Dayton is the governor of all Minnesotans, and that candidate was you. It was a gracious speech, it was a classy speech, it was a uniting speech. Don't we need to hear that from President Trump?
I don't think so. I can only speak for myself. I think we did exactly what the law provided. We followed through all the legal processes. And when they were exhausted, when it was clear that I thought the right thing to do was to tell Minnesota that the race was over, we did that. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton didn't do that. Granted, she wasn't an incumbent, but
well, she conceded the next day.
Not in the way you're talking about. I think bottom line is I prefer to look forward. Esme, let's the most comforting thing is that the president made it clear we will have a peaceful transition of power. I think that's really important. Let's not mess that up. Let's make sure that we're all coming together, and let's try to help this next administration get started, get off the ground, and start to do some good things for the American people.
Congressman, I want to point out that you voted to certify Joe Biden's election. You and Congressman Pete Stauber voted for that. 2 other Minnesota members of Congress, Jim Hagedorn and Michelle Fischbach, voted to overturn the election. They were in the majority of Republicans. 137 Republican House members, and I believe 8 senators voted to overturn the election even after the violence. Are you concerned about people who are still voting that way, and also people who genuinely still believe this election was somehow stolen?
Well, there's 2 questions there. And the first one, I can only speak for my actions, Esme. When it comes to Constitution, this is a living document. 2 instances that we are told as members of Congress we are to insert ourselves. One is if a candidate doesn't get 270 electors, then Congress gets involved. The other one is if a state sends alternate electors. And people have to remember, I think it's the 10th Amendment that says anything that is not expressly enumerated, a power to the federal government, is expressly reserved to the states. Our founders were concerned about a concentration of power anywhere. So I thought I read the Constitution by the letter. Now, the second part of your question, there is a large group of Americans who have lost trust in institutions, and we're going to have to work extremely hard over the next 2 years to try and rebuild that trust. And people have to look at these election laws at the states. You know, one of the things that I saw,
it's not just trust. They don't believe the facts. I mean, the facts are that Joe Biden won this election. It really wasn't close. It wasn't like your election back in 2010, which was close, 8,000 votes. What about that? It's more than trust.
Well, the issues, Esme, that I think most people were very concerned about were governors, secretaries of state, attorneys general, and the courts were unilaterally changing, adjusting election laws. Now, they were doing it because they were trying to keep Americans safe, but they were doing it, and that is the sole authority of the state legislatures, no one else. And so, you know, I think in the effort that people made to try and keep us safe and allow us to exercise that most sacred right of voting, I think they created some of the problem, because election laws can't be unilaterally changed by anyone. They are the sole authority of state legislatures. And I think going forward, I think we need to reaffirm that.
Okay. Well, Congressman Tom Emmer, we certainly hope that it is a peaceful week in Washington and certainly a peaceful inaugural. And we really appreciate your coming on this morning.
Amen to that, Esme. And there are better days ahead.
That is very good to hear. I know we all certainly pray that is the case. Thank you so much, Congressman Tom Emmer. Always a pleasure.